Greetings, piano students. This is a supplementary video lesson for the chord progression that modulates to the dominant that I ask you to practice in class, as it is found on page 184 in your Alfred's Group Piano for Adults textbook. So let me first demonstrate it to you first in the key that is written in your textbooks, starting off in C major, modulating to its dominant, which is G major. Now we can see that it modulates to the dominant through the use of a pivot chord on the fourth chord of the progression here. First you establish the key of C major by playing the 1 chord, and then followed by its 5-7, and then back to the 1 chord. That establishes that you're in that key for the first half of the progression. But then we have the this fourth chord, which is the 6th chord, A minor / C. Okay, that is both an A minor / C, and it is a 6/6 chord, but it also shares in common with its dominant the 2/6 chord, as it is in the key that we're heading for, which is G major, and then we just move from there to the 1/6/4, which is G major with the D in the bass, and then that cadential 6/4 moves nicely to the 5-7, and then you end up on your new home key of G major, the 1 chord there. Now, regardless of whatever key that you're in, it's important to establish a solid bass line throughout the whole progression. And it's easy because it all stays within a 5-finger pattern. For whatever key that you're in, make sure you start with your second finger over the tonic note, or at least the first tonic note, that in this case it being C. Then play a perfect 4th down to your 5th finger, then go back up to your tonic note with the 2nd finger, repeat that again, go up a whole step and play it with your thumb, play it again, then play down a perfect 5th down to your new home key, and in this case it's G. So as long as you play that bass line at the beginning before you play the progression, then you should be good to go for the rest of the progression. So let's talk about what's going on with the right hand. In the right hand, you want to start off with a first inversion triad as your tonic chord here, okay? Even though you're playing the root in the bass with your left hand here, your right hand will start off in a first inversion triad here. All right? Remember, the fingering for all first inversion triads that I want you to play at the piano is 1, 2, and 5. Now when you go to the 5-7 chord, you'll notice that there's one note that stays the same, and in this case it's the G, but it's always going to be that middle note there. So always keep that second finger on that middle voice, and then the outer voices move in by a half step, all right? And you should use the fingering 1, 2, 4 at that point, okay? I like to call that the squishy move, going from the 1, 2, 5 to the 1, 2, 4 there, and then back out to the 1, 2, 5 there. So you end up with that as far as the first 3 chords to establish the tonic key. Now going into the pivot chord here, you'll notice that there's only one voice that changes here, and it is, again, and in this case, it's the middle voice that changes, and the outer voices stay the same here. So in this case, the middle voice moves up by a whole step there. So it's only that one note difference there. And you can just play it with 1, 3, 5, since it is a second inversion triad here in your right hand on that pivot 6 chord there, or 6 or 2 chord, depending on which key you think you're in at this point here. Now if you look at the next chord, your cadential 6/4, you're also moving to another second inversion triad in the right hand here, and everything moves diatonically down in our new key. But just remember, it's the 1 chord in your new key, so that's G major in this case. So stay and just pick up everything and move it down here. In this case, when you're going from that pivot chord to this cadential 6/4 chord, bottom voice moves down by a whole step, middle voice moves down by a whole step, but then the top voice moves down by a half step like that there. Right? And then in the second to last chord, then we're going to our 5/7 chord, which is also, in just the right hand, is also a second inversion triad. In this case, your bottom voice moves down by a whole step, middle voice moves down by a half step, and then the top voice moves down by a whole step there. Okay? You actually end up with a F sharp diminished triad here when you're lacking the D there. So if it sounds a little bit funny, that's okay. That's the way it's supposed to be there. All right? But that's part of your 5/7 chord, and then that should resolve to our new key of G major, which is also in first inversion, just like the first chord. And then you have to switch to 1, 2, 5 there. All right? Look at the movement from the 5/7 to the 1 chord here. Bottom note moves down by a half step here, and then also just be aware that the middle voice is going to be a whole step higher than the bottom note of the previous chord, and then the top voice is going to move down by a whole step. And then we're back to the G major. So here's how the right hand goes through the C major. So now let me play it hands together so you see what it looks like one more time now that you've gone over the right hand. So here's both hands, whole progression. 2, ready, and. So let me go through all the different keys here that you're responsible for, so you get to see what it looks like here. Start off with G major, that will modulate to its key of dominant key of D major here. Remember to establish your bass line first. Get that second finger on G. And then here we go. Let me do the second one, which is F major, and this one modulates to its dominant of C major here. Again, make sure your bass line is in the right place. And then here's how F major to C major goes. Here's the next example. This one's D major, modulating to A major. Get your hand set. And finally, this is the last one. This is B flat major modulating to its dominant, which is F major. Here we go, both hands. So those are all the keys that you're responsible for this upcoming quiz. If you need to go back through this video and check some of the notes from any of the keys that I've assigned to you, feel free to do so. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me at aharomp@sfasu.edu. Otherwise, best of luck to you on your chord progression that modulates to the dominant quiz. Bye.